Tony's just trying to make me feel bad about how nice the weather is down there. Hey, well, welcome back, Tony.
Thanks, Cav. Well, it's cool, and so it's nice, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's been amazing. Like we had 40-degree days, and now it's back to 18 in the space of a week.
That's
It's
Melbourne
crazy.
or Victoria in summer.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're safe from the fires, though? You said you've had some smoke?
Yeah. We had smoke on Saturday. It was, which I think probably came across from the Otways, which was having a bushfire, and the weather often comes from that way from the west. So I think that was it. Nothing really close to us. I guess I don't know how far the Otways would be from here as the crow flies. 150 k's maybe. Yeah, so we got smoke. But no, I was going to save it for after hours. But the sad news was, well, the good news and the sad news was, some of the farms that I have horses at burnt. Lindsay Park, where I have race horses at, is in Euroa, and Longwood Farm, where I have some broodmares and offspring, is in Longwood, which was the centre of the bushfire. So both places had to get their horses out in a hurry overnight. 150 in Longwood's case and about 350 in Lindsay Park's case. And unfortunately, Lindsay Park lost 7 horses to the fire.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So luckily, well, I shouldn't say luckily. Fortunately, none of those were mine. But yeah, it's been a tough week for the Victorian-based breeding and racing community. Really tough.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the
sad.
emails and interviews I've seen have just been amazing. I mean, horrific in what's happened, and tales of, people being up for days overnight. Really good stories of everyone chipping in to help. Lucky stories of, in one case, a vet was driving past a paddock and saw it was on fire and got the horses out, just coincidentally. Stories of horses, which must be like amazing animals and must have some kind of genetic disposition to surviving fires, but like horses completely surrounded by flame up against the fence and then waiting for the last minute to jump over the flames to where it had burnt, and therefore they were safe. Horses following other horses to safety. It's just, incredible.
Wow.
But really unfortunate. I mean, Lindsay Park lost the house, they lost paddocks, they lost a lot of things. They had firefighting irrigation, but it was really only over their main barns and facilities, but they lost a lot. Longwood Farm lost a lot. And then they've got it's coming on top of a big sale up in the Gold Coast at Magic Millions. So Michael Christian, I have a few broodmares with in partnership, had to be flying up and back to his farm to deal with the fires and then get the horses ready for sale up on the Gold Coast as well. So it's a very, very busy time.
It's sort of shocking to me that we've had all of this warning for decades that things were going to get hotter and we were going to have more fires and this kind of stuff. And we still have fires and they still cause problems. Like we haven't figured out solutions for preventing or dampening down fires better than we're currently doing it.
Well, I think a couple of things. I'm sure when everything settles down, there'll be inquiries and the rest of it. I know when New South Wales had them and I was living in Sydney, there was a lot of media about and become very political about this council wouldn't allow back burning and that council would. And then people would say, well, you should listen to the Aboriginals who've been doing it for years and they weren't allowed to light the normal fires and et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be a political shit sandwich again, as it often is. But in terms of these particular cases, the stories that I'm hearing from the principals, like Michael Christian and David Hayes, who flew back from Hong Kong, is just that they thought they were safe, and at 3 a.m. in the morning, suddenly the wind gets up to 100 k's an hour and the fire just turns on a dime and comes roaring towards you when you thought you were safe. So, maybe they need to change their practices, and if there's a bushfire in the area, even they have to evacuate the horses. But currently the practice is you put them in paddocks which are away from trees. So You find a large paddock and it's away from trees. It shouldn't burn, but the fires were just blowing bombs onto the paddocks and the grass was catching alight. So, and it happened within like half an hour to an hour. So it was very unexpected and very quick.
Yeah, look, I'm just talking more. We've got to be doing more. I mean, we saw this in California with the fires that they had a year ago. We have it here. I mean, fires obviously nothing new here, but we know it's going to be getting worse. We know that it's guaranteed it's going to be getting hotter. Fires are going to be getting worse. What are we doing as a society to prepare for that? Maybe there is a lot of stuff being done. I'm just unaware of it, but it's something that I hope we get a handle on, because we don't want to go through this every year, every couple of years.
Yeah.
Indefinitely.
Yeah, I agree.
It's tragic.
And it was only last year or the year before that these places, Longwood Farm, was affected by floods. So, it's been tough couple of years for them.
Well, I'll tell you who else is having a tough year. Kevin Rudd, Tony.
Okay. Well,
speaking of putting out fires,
a small violin plays for him.
Kevin Rudd's out as the US ambassador. Obviously, well, I don't know when it was, late last year, when he organised a meeting with the Prime Minister and President Trump. President Trump didn't know who he was.
I thought Trump did know who he was and said he didn't like him and probably never would.
No, a journalist said to him, the Australian Foreign Minister has said some terrible things about you. What do you think? He goes, well, who is he?
Ambassador.
And he said, ambassador, sorry. And he said to Albo, does he still work for you? And Albo's like, yeah, he's the guy sitting next to me at the table. And Trump was like, never heard of him.
But he did go on later on to say, I do know who he is and don't like him and probably never will.
Yeah.
Look, who knows what the situation is. My gut feel is they had to put some distance between those remarks and when Kevin exited. So it didn't look like they were just following what Trump wanted.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a difficult replacement, isn't it? Because I don't know if Albo can tap anyone on their side of politics who's going to be favourable to Trump.
And who hasn't said something critical about Trump in the last 8 years.
Which means putting a conservative person in as the ambassador.
Peter Dutton in. Put Peter Dutton in there.
Or Tony Abbott or someone like that.
Yeah.
But if they do that,
the
and then Trump doesn't survive, for more than a couple of years, and they're out of step again in a few years' time. So it's going to be an interesting choice.
Yeah. Well, fun and games. Obviously, sort of a crazy period in the US in the last week. Lady in Minnesota getting shot, and Jerome Powell, J. Powell, under criminal investigation. I think not just him. I think the Federal Reserve's under criminal investigation more broadly. I think so.
I just read what I read was that he gave testimony to Congress, which he does, I think, twice a year, and mentioned the fact that there were overruns in the renovations of the Fed building in Washington, and that's what sparked this criminal investigation or criminal suit or whatever it is over the overruns. And of course, there's all sorts of political toing and froing. There's been allegations that they were putting in a private bathroom and a private eating area for the board and a special lift and all this stuff, which Jerome's denied. And that they were putting in new marble, and Powell's pointed out that they're reusing the current marble they had to take down, but some of it broke. So there will be some new marble in to replace that, but they're reusing what they took out. And it's a very old building. It's 100 years since it was last maintained or renovated. So, it's an excuse, just like it was an excuse. Who's the other one that they're prosecuting at the moment? Another Fed board member who was supposed to have lied on a mortgage application. So she's being, Lisa Cook, I think her name is.
Yeah, that's right.
So she's being prosecuted as well. So it's Trump doing what Trump does, using every avenue he can to try and get his way.
Yeah.
And why is that important? Or why is it important to have an independent Fed or an independent RBA? Well, exactly to stop people like Trump from having their way on interest rates, because they will cut to suit themselves and to suit the electoral cycle, and that might not be in the best interest of the economy. Which kind of begs the question, well, if you need independent governance of the economy, why do you need a president, or why do you need an elected prime minister or parliament? Why not have like maybe an elected panel of review, like a very small Senate, and then have everything run by oligarchies, or what do you call it when the smart people run the country? Is that an oligarchy? No, it's
technocrats.
Yeah, okay, technocrats. I think there's a term for it where you have anyway. Yeah, so why don't you have if it's important to the economy to have independence, why isn't it important to medicine, defence, schools, education, all the rest of it too?
Because it doesn't affect bankers as much.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, that's an aside. I think pretty much everyone agrees, except for Trump, agrees you have to have an independent board. He's placing a lot of pressure on Powell, and Powell, his term as the Fed chair finishes in May, but he's still a member of the board for another year or so. So I think, and I don't quite understand how it works in the US. I think they have a 7-member board, but maybe that's an executive of something like 25 or 30 actual members of the Fed. There's a lot more. So, but Trump's trying to get control of that executive and I think he's got 3 out of 7 now, and he's trying to get the 4th. And of course, Powell was one of his appointees anyway. So it's sometimes just having the power to appoint doesn't mean you control it, but didn't work out in that case. But yeah, I think, obviously Trump wants to cut interest rates, if for nothing else, to give him cover on tariffs and whatever else he's doing that causes inflation, including tax cuts to the rich. So yeah, I think he's proving the case for an independent board by his actions, really. But, sometimes society has to go through a dose of salts, and if Trump gets control of the Fed and cuts interest rates, and there are problems arising because of that, like runaway inflation, that may, mean that he doesn't get away with it the second time. We'll see.
Maybe Trump is a genius after all.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
The whole tariff situation doesn't seem to have destroyed the US economy like a lot of people thought it would a year ago when he started messing with that. So who knows?
And also, too, the fact that they're doing a building renovation, which is going over budget, I think that's really talking to Trump's core competency of, property development. And
is it his core competency, though? Is it his core competency?
His core business.
Yes.
Well, you'd have to say it's his core competency if you accept he's competent in anything. But it's his core business. So I think that's kind of gotten up his nose as well, that he's employing someone who can't renovate a property to his liking.
Yeah, he said he's not good. Trump said Powell's not good at running the Fed, and he's not good at building buildings either.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I tell you who is a genius, Tony. Me, I'm a genius. The Light portfolio for the last 12 months is doing quintuple market, Tony. Quintuple market.
Five times.
Where it's up 40% versus the index up 8% in the last 12 months. I mean, okay, it's your system, but we'll share the genius thing. We'll share it.
I knew I shouldn't have appointed you QAV COCOM.
We'll share the glory. Like quintuple market. And as you know, the Light, for the first couple of years I was running the Light portfolios, they were, 20% under the market. Not all of them, but, somewhere. But it's been absolutely bonkers. I sent out the QAV Light email newsletter yesterday saying, we're doing quintuple market over the last year. Don't worry, it's not going to last. Like, if I'm confident of anything, it's not going to last. But it should give us wind in the sails anyway for the Light portfolio for a long time to come.
That's good. What's been the standout?
Oh, good question. Let me bring up Navexa and have a look.
Oh, while you're
Uh,
doing that too, can you give us a split between growth and dividends? Because that's going to be a question we have to answer
oh, I
down
can.
the track.
Mm.
Mm.
So in the last 1 year, as I said, today it's 41.6% over the last 12 months. Capital gain 35% versus 6% for income return.
Okay. So it's
So,
growth.
yeah, well and truly growth.
Yeah.
Um, so we've got WGN up 177%,
Wagners. Yep.
GNP up 145,
GS Post.
RRL up 138,
Regis Resources.
SRG up 130, PRN up 122, SHA up
Parenti.
120, PRU up 95, NWH up 90, ASG up 85, SXE up 74, 73, 74. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of stocks giving almost double returns.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely bonkers year for the portfolios. And, some of them, I hold in a number of the light portfolios. So, it's sort of, we've got that growth across 2, 3, 4 portfolios. So
That's interesting
yeah,
too, isn't it? Because I've always thought if you hit the larger the portfolio, the more index-like the returns. But your 4 portfolios would have 50 plus stocks in them, wouldn't they, if you aggregate them?
yeah, I'm looking through if Navexa tells me here how many stocks. Let me see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 41
41 stocks. Okay.
across 4 portfolios. Yeah. Oh, hold
Hmm.
on. No more. 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. Yeah, nearly 50. Um, yeah. So there's a bit of overlap between different portfolios.
Hmm.
And, not all of them have the 15 to 20. But yeah, like really, really amazing performance. And a lot of that, obviously, I think is in the last 6 months too. So good times.
Mm.
The US portfolio has had a resurgence as well in the last 3 months, but we'll talk about that in our US show coming up next. But it's doing quite well as well for some reason. Tell you who's not doing well: Super Retail, Tony.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I'm a shareholder.
Tell us what happened
Mm.
to Super Retail yesterday.
Oh, they put out their, well, it's confession season. That's the first point to note, I guess. We're coming into, or in January, and in February we'll get the um, results announcements. But they put out an update yesterday, which I didn't think was too bad, to be honest. Like-for-like sales, which is the important metric if you're a retailer, they were up 2.5%, which is pretty much in line with what people thought. But there was a bit of an undershoot on the profit side of things, not by a whole lot. So I don't think that was the reason for I think it was about a 5% sell down yesterday in the share price. But what I think what spooked analysts was the fact that they mentioned in the announcement that there had been more promotional discounting going on in the business, and so that's hurt margins a little bit. But I think the reason why the analysts are focusing on that is because one of the businesses that Super own is Rebel Sport, and a large UK sport retailer called Sports Direct opened their first store in Melbourne at the end of last year. And so the analysts are kind of waiting to see what happens with competition. And if the fact that the business was discounting more, maybe they're already suffering from competition. I'm not sure. I had a look at, I went into that Sports Direct store just after it opened last year, just out of curiosity, and didn't blow me away. It's a flagship store, so it was light and bright and big, but it didn't to me, it didn't seem to carry any bigger range than the Rebel Sports Store would, or have any sort of unique selling proposition to it, really. So it might just be the fact that if there's another large competitor coming into the market, then Rebel's margins will decline eventually, but because they've been the category killer to date. But so far, Sports Direct's only opened one site. They have a retail online presence, which encouraged them to open stores in Australia. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think that the analysts are a bit spooked about what could happen rather than what has happened so far. A couple of other things too. I mean, it's got a new CEO. So you recall there was a lot of noise around this stock last year when the CEO was alleged to have an affair with the head of HR, and there was whistleblowers who were sacked, and they launched court cases. So I'm, hoping that sort of noise is behind them. But with a new CEO, he's got to, make himself. He's got to earn the trust of the analysts and get a bit of a track record, which he hasn't had at the moment. This is his first result, so. It's a bit of a wait and see with a new CEO to see how long it takes for them to get trusted as well.
It's not a sell for you yet or anything, though?
I got an alert overnight to say it had crossed the sell line, but when I looked this morning, it was up again above it, and it still is now. So,
right.
I'll just have to follow the rules. If it becomes a sell, I'll have to sell it. But like I said, I wasn't that troubled with the results the sales announcement, the update.
Right.
Certainly not enough. I couldn't see why it was justified this for a 5% sell-off in the stock, and it's been back up again above its buy line today. So perhaps I'm not alone in that thought.
I'm just looking at it.
Above its sell line today.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on the bread ladder. It looks like it's well above its sell line too. Sell line I've got a $14.17, and it's trading at $14.69. So there's a bit of buffer there.
Yeah. That's what I've got too.
Speaking of buy lines and sell lines, you and I have been having email threads about grope. How's your groping going this week, Tony?
Yeah, very slowly. I spent most of the weekend on it. And I've probably only done about 25 transactions, I think, because it's just so slow. So thank you for the code. That was a big help.
Did you get my update last night?
I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Sorry, I've been prepping for the show.
I think the code. You sent me a bunch of places where it disagreed with your manual or the Bredelator. When I went through them one by one, it was Yahoo Finance versus Google Finance numbers, except for the couple that were delisted, SDG and ECX. Turns out my backup data of delisted stocks didn't have any prices for those, so the code was just going delisted. Too bad. I did have some data for TRS, so I could do the TRS one, but the others. Jordan emailed me and said that he's got some pricing history for delisted stocks. So I've asked him if he has ECX and SDG and any others that we may need. That's going to be right. That's the big problem I've got at the moment. Where are you getting? You said you did some manual numbers on those. How are you getting price history on them? How?
The charts are still in Stock Doctor, so I go into the chart and do it like we used to do before the Bredelator, get a 5-year monthly graph up, and then use the segment drawing tool.
I go into Stock Doctor for ECX, and it's got nothing. It says
it'll be under Fleet Partners, probably, FPR.
Right, but FPR was around. It just changed. Okay, so it just changed its name. It wasn't an acquisition.
Yeah. No, it just changed its name.
Okay, so I can use that one. And what about SDG?
Still in Stock Doctor. I've been able to use Stock Doctor for all the delisted stock. SDG, MLD, which of course is a feature of QAV. We have stocks on our buy list that get acquired. And makes backtracking a bit harder.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can rerun it on FPR and look at it with SDG and do those manually too. Find out why my code's not running on either of those because it doesn't have prices. But the rest of it I think is okay. I think there's just Yahoo Finance's numbers don't always
Right.
agree with Google Finance's
Okay.
closing prices and stuff.
Okay. Well, if you're confident, I'll use your code. I've been double checking everything as I go at this stage.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's part of the problem. The other problem, of course, is, say I have to sell something in my analysis, then I have to go and find the buy list, open it up, change the code in the buy list to add the growth over PE to the QAV score, do a ranking, and then pick the next stock that isn't already in the portfolio and isn't a Josephine or a commodity sell or whatever. So yeah, it's just painstaking at the moment. But yeah, I'll get there. Well, I did sort of stop on Sunday night and think maybe I just need to do this with one or two stocks first of all and just see if that is conclusive, and then maybe expand it out to 5 or 10, because I'm doing it with 20 stocks and it's just very cumbersome and slow at the moment. And I initially did it with 20 because the first time I looked at it, there wasn't a huge difference in the top of the buy list between adding growth over PE percentage to the score and just having the score as it currently is. Partly because all of our stocks don't have a growth recorded because they're not covered by analysts, and partly because all the stocks, have anemic growth over PE, because we're looking at growth over PE, not just the growth. And so they can be growing at 20%, but if their PE is 20, then we don't, doesn't add much to the QAV score. So it's only those ones which have really big growth forecast that makes a difference. But anyway, I'll keep plugging away because it's very interesting to look at. And as you just outlined in your portfolio review, it seems like this year anyway, growth has been driving everything. So there's got to be something in there that we can use.
Well, the email I got from Jordan was about the fact that he's just finished his own regression testing system that he's shared with me. Well, he shared the output, not the code, but the output of some of the stuff that he's worked on. So I did send him an email and asked if we can add or if we can tweak it to look at grope. So I'll let you know when he gets back to me.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Hi, Jordan. Thanks, Jordan. Good job, Jordan.
Thank you.
Well, that's all I've got. We've got some questions from Doug. What else have you got on your list of talking points, Tony?
The last thing I had to talk about was just to back up what a good year it's been, because my brother-in-law, Wal, gave me his returns. We caught up yesterday, had a nice game of golf at Mornington, up the road. Lovely day and great course overlooking the bay. Anyway, his results were up 37.69% for the financial year. So he was pretty happy with that. And
financial year?
Or
calendar
actually, it doesn't say, could be calendar. It doesn't actually say on what he said. Could be calendar. Probably calendar. And that was mainly growth as well, 32% growth and 6% dividends.
Well, as I said before, most of the light growth, I think, came in the last 6 months. So it could be the financial year too. I think the first 6 months of the financial year was pretty flat for us.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't say. But he was happy with that. It's a good result. So thanks for sharing. And the only other thing I've got is a pulled pork on Kip McGrath Education.
So just going back to light, so I said 41.65% for the last 12 months. If I look at this financial year, it's only 29.19. So, the first 6 months, some part of the first 6 months did count. It's not just the financial year.
Okay.
Okay. So Kip who?
Kip McGrath Education.
All right. Do you want to do Doug's questions first?
Yeah, sure.
Doug, I haven't heard from Doug for ages, so it's great to hear from you, Doug. An update on returns from Doug. Since inception with you guys in 2020, he's got 2 accounts. Super account number 1, 19.16 CAGR. Super account number 2, 19.42% CAGR. Both roughly 12% capital growth and 7% dividends. One account is twice the value of the other, but otherwise always stayed fully invested with minimal cash for insurances and other costs. So thank you, QAV. Well done. Doug.
Ooh,
That's
good numbers.
yeah, and right on the money. 19% CAGR over 5 odd years,
Hmm.
just where you'd want it to be. So well done. Now to my questions. I'm starting a portfolio outside of super and using some debt to gear it. I'm not interested in specific financial advice, just shared experiences of how TK or others have managed multiple portfolios. Question 1. Do you treat the combined value of all portfolios as the total portfolio and then split that into 15 to 20 lots for investing? Or stick with 15 to 20 lots within each portfolio? I've mostly done the latter with my 2 super accounts, but have found I'm sometimes buying the same stocks in both portfolios and possibly then overstepping the 20% ADT risk, particularly if it is a small stock.
Yeah, well, I treat my various accounts as being part of one portfolio. So, and I only have, I think it's 8 stocks at the moment. So, yeah, but in the past when I had 15 to 20 stocks, I wouldn't hold more than that across all 3 accounts, and that does mean that one account can perform differently to another account because it might have a rocket ship in it and the other one doesn't, or a high yielding stock and the other one doesn't. But I mean, having said that, it seems like it's not the case for the QAV Light portfolio. It seems to be working with 50 stocks or 47 stocks. So I've always assumed, and it's always been my experience, that the bigger the portfolio, the closer to the index it becomes. But, maybe I have to question that based on how the QA Light portfolios are going. But certainly in my case, I treat all my accounts as being part of one portfolio.
You know, I wouldn't just look at the QAV Light group in the last 12 months and use that as an indication over time. So if I look at the Light group overall time, so that's going back to 2022, it's up 22%.
Which is still good.
Yeah, it's still good, but it's not.
And it's still behaving the way that a QAV portfolio of 15 to 20 stocks would behave, as I would expect.
Yeah, actually, it's weird when I look at Navexa. It's got a chart and it's got the numbers up the top. The numbers up the top, it says 22%. The chart, it says 9.68%. So I don't know
Okay.
which one to believe here, but I'm going with the 22%. Yeah. So I think that's about what you'd expect. But still, yeah, with
Yeah.
50
Yeah.
stocks, that's still interesting.
Yeah. But it makes sense to me. I mean, if you take it to extremes and you have every stock in the market, you'll get the index. So you would have thought the larger the portfolio, the more index-like the performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my experience. What I have done is to keep it to 15 to 20 stocks across all my accounts, family trusts, super, individual names, etc.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, next question from Doug. How has TK found the adjustment to focusing on higher yield QAV stocks in the past few years as he's living off the portfolio? Is he getting a similar split to above of 12 cap 7 div or different?
I think traditionally similar, so probably a little bit more to growth than dividends, but over time the dividends can get quite high. Sometimes they've been up around 10%. But at the moment, if I look at my recent returns over the last year or so, they've been outsized in terms of growth because of stocks like PRN and PRU. And to be fair, when I put those in the portfolio, I think it was around about 15 to 18 months ago. And I also picked out the highest yielding stocks in the filter on the buy list, which were things like ANZ and Super Retail Group and QBE. I also thought, well, I'll put in some good dividend yielders, but I'll make sure they've got a bit of growth there as well, and put in Perseus and Parenti, which were both, I think, at that stage still yielding in the 4% range, which was good enough. But they've been the ones which have provided all the growth. The other stocks, Super and QBE and ANZ, have done very well. which has been good. And that's one thing to note, is that, especially in Australia, people will always pay up for dividend yield is because of the franking credits. So it's not a bad strategy to focus on dividend yield, quite frankly. So yeah, I think normally I've been getting in the sort of ratios that Doug has. This year, for example, I think I got 36%, and most of that was out of the growth side of things. I think it was only about 5% from dividend. But I think this year is different because of the way that growth stocks in our portfolios have performed. I tried to find a period or find a portfolio which I could use to benchmark Doug, but it was pretty hard. I found one account that didn't include Parenti, and the split was 8.5% growth to 5% yield over the last financial year. And that was against STW of 2.4% growth and 2.6% yield. I think it was the financial year. I may have that wrong, but it was in the last 12 months anyway. So 8.5% growth and 5% yield, not including Parenti, is kind of more in line with what Doug's getting as well, which has been my experience over time too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question 3. What do you think about the impact of drawing down 6 or 7% from the portfolio if the dividends aren't enough to cover lifestyle or interest costs in a leveraged scenario? Obviously, there will be cap gains and possibly no discount depending on holding time, but other than that, am I missing anything?
I don't think so, but just a couple of words on that. And this is not financial advice. It's my experience and, what I would suggest Doug has a look at and to think about. In terms of gearing, just like a business, a little bit of gearing is good and a lot of gearing is bad. So I've always tried to keep my gearing at about 33% of the portfolio. So certainly no more than 50%, because, if you go into a GFC and stocks decline 50%, then you're going to be, if you have to sell something, you could start to put yourself into a difficult situation financially. So 33% is a good number, I think. That's what I've used. I'm not a fan of margin loans, so I don't know how Doug's going to gear his portfolio, but just a general comment. Because, if you think about the way margin loans work, when they make a call on you, it's usually the worst time to sell something because it's dropped dramatically and you may not want to sell it, but you're forced to sell it. So I'm not a big fan. You can lose, a lot of capital, if not all your capital, through margin loans. So be very careful of those. I've always used property to borrow against and then gear into shares. So I don't know if that's what Doug's doing, but I guess a couple of points on that. The type of loan matters. So having a standard vanilla principal and interest loan is the hardest to service from a cash flow perspective because dividends usually come twice a year, but you're hit every month with a monthly repayment. So you've got to have a bit of a cash buffer before you start and then be able to balance the dividends to make sure you can meet your monthly requirements for the other 5 months a year when you're not getting a dividend. So that's one thing. I've always found the best loan to use for this purpose is an overdraft or an interest-only loan, it's sometimes called, that allows you to make lump sum pay downs when you want to and capitalises the interest in between and doesn't require any repayment of the capital until it suits you or until the end of the loan. And that sort of solves the cash flow differential between a monthly repayment and when the dividends come in lumpy fashion. I mean, you can get better managed at dividends because some companies have a March, September reporting date and then they'll pay their dividends at a different time. So you might only have to manage cash flow for 3 months of the year if you can find some of those off-cycle companies to help, but you still have to manage cash flow between the months when you're not getting, or on the months when you're not getting dividend payments. And that might be you just keep a year of dividends up your sleeve to help, but it's just got to take it into account. But certainly certainly an interest-only loan's good from that point of view of being able to get a dividend and then pay down the loan. But also if you sell something, you can put the cash to work straight away while you're waiting to buy something by putting it on the interest, paying off the overdraft down quite a bit and reducing the interest payments, interest incurred. So that helps too. And then probably the next loan, which is probably more common these days post-Hayne, is a loan with an offset account. So you can put money into the offset account as you sell things before reinvesting, which helps to reduce the interest on the loan as well. And you can, if you get a big dividend, you can put it in there, and then that helps to reduce the interest payments. But you can also then take from there to pay the monthly principal and interest as well. So just be careful of what type of loan you can get. And I don't know Doug's circumstances, but if he is close to retirement or facing retirement, the banks are going to look at, how long he can service the loan for. And my experience with the banks is they nowadays, post-Hayne again, they don't take dividend income as being a valid or at least 100% source of earnings going forward to allow them to give you a 25-year loan, apart from the fact that they may not think you're going to live 25 years and they'll have difficulty getting it back off you. They generally look for wages in the main, and if they look at someone and they say, well, you're 55 or you're 60, you're not going to work for 25 years, we'll have to loan you a much lower amount or not loan to you at all. So that might be an issue as well that Doug has to grapple with. And then in terms of using the principal to live off in the years where dividends aren't enough, nothing wrong with that. You just got to be careful again that you're not doing it all the time, and that if you have a couple of bad years, that again that becomes a serious drain on capital. But if depending on what his plans are, he may need to go and talk to a financial advisor about matching his plans with his actuarial assessment of lifespan and maybe model some options around how much you can draw down or for how many years you can draw it down, etc. But it shouldn't be a problem if it's like a once-off just to get him through a cash flow shortfall until dividends pick up again.
And the last question from Doug. Recently, I read something about a 45-day rule for holding a stock before franking credits kick in. Can you enlighten us on this? I've looked it up via AI and understand it, but don't recall the podcast covering it before, so I thought it might be something others didn't know about. It's basically to stop dividend harvesting, right?
Yes, it is. Thanks for raising that, Doug. So if you want the franking credits on a dividend, you have to hold the stock for 45 days. And the 45 days don't include the buy and sell day, just to be clear. And you sometimes see this in the market that 45 days or thereabouts after a stock goes ex-dividend or pays a dividend, the share price starts to decline again a little bit because people are then selling out once they've got their franking credit. But the 45-day rule is there to make sure you're not just diving in and out of stocks on their ex-dividend date or just before their ex-dividend date just to get the dividend, which was being done for a while before until this law came in from the tax office. And just a couple of other things to be aware of, and these are fairly arcane and probably won't affect most people. That's the ATO talks about the 45-day period as being a period where you hold the shares at risk. And what that means is that you haven't, for example, any sort of insurance on them falling, so like a put option or even a call option, I guess, either way, that protects your capital for those 45 days. They've got to be at risk. So you've got to hold the shares and you've got to be at the whim of the market as to whether you can sell them in 45 days and get your money back. So they do test for that. There's one exemption which talks about if you get less than $5,000 franking credit in a year, then they don't worry about that at-risk particular point. But that, again, that's not going to be affecting most people. And the last thing to note is that the ATO will always use what's called the last in, first out rule. So if you have a number of share purchases in the same shareholding over time and you start to sell, that if the last purchase doesn't have a 45-day holding period, you won't get the franking credit because the tax office looks at the the timing of your purchases and uses the last in, first out rule. So just be aware of that as well. I think that's about it. It's all available on the ATO website, or as Doug says, by Googling it or getting ChatGPT or Google AI to have a look for you. But just something to be aware of if you're in the habit of buying and selling shares for their dividends and franking credits.
Right. Fascinating.
Yeah. That's what we talked about this before, how, the government brings in the rule and then someone works out how to get around it pretty quickly, and then they have to get a Band-Aid in to stop them from doing too much damage. And that's what this is another example of.
So why does the government care about whether or not you hold it for 45 days and have it at risk? Like,
I don't know, quite frankly. I don't have a problem with people dividend harvesting. If it happens in the market and people are aware of it, then they can take that into account and they're buying and selling. I think perhaps what they're trying to do is to lessen the amount of franking credits that they have to rebate, which is a cost to the government. And if you're preventing people from dividend harvesting, then that's one less source of franking credits you have to pay. So it probably means there's just less franking credits in the market.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doug.
There are plenty of financial products out there called things like Dividend Harvester and income, like all the income funds would have had some kind of version of it
Really?
Because there's a lot of appetite out there for franking credits and dividends, especially if you're in a self, or if you're in a superannuation fund. You're paying less tax than the franking credit is worth, so you're actually getting a cash payment back into the super fund for franking credits. So it's important if you're retired.
Thank you for those questions, Doug. Thank you,
thanks,
Tony, for your answers. You want to get into your
pulled
pork?
I will, which is on Kip McGrath Education. So this is it's a small ADT stock, so I'll say that from the outset. And well, I think it must be one of the few stocks on the buy list I haven't covered before. There are a few other ones, but definitely haven't covered Kip McGrath before. I did own it many, many years ago, probably even decades ago, but it's a small ADT stock, so I can't buy it now. Kip McGrath Education is a franchisor, essentially, of tutorial services. They do have some company operations, but it certainly for a long time was just the franchisor of tutors around the world. But as I said, it's only getting about $19,000 trade per day, so this may not be of interest to a lot of people. But if you have a small fund, then you might be interested. They were founded back in 1976 in Maitland in Australia, out of the garage of Kip McGrath and his wife. I don't know how to pronounce her name, Dugnie, I think. And they would tutor local children who needed help with literacy and numeracy. And so they developed a tutorial service. They do place a lot of effort on not just helping children with their maths and English, and they primarily focus on maths and English services, but they do employ, or at least franchise qualified teachers, and they run through a process which seeks to find via testing what the shortfalls are for the child and put a plan together for to meet their needs. So that's a little bit different to some of their competitors, but they do face a lot of competition. There's not much of a moat around this business, and especially in the last sort of decade or so, there's been lots of online services pop up, like for example, Mathletics, which Alex used when she was a kid, which can provide help and support around not necessarily tutoring, but certainly help and support about getting your maths back up to where it should be. What else can I say about them? I guess the other thing to say is it is around the world. They operate around the world because it's a franchise model. Very strong in the UK and Ireland, but also in New Zealand, South Africa, the Middle East, Asia. They were trying to grow into the US, but they've pulled out of that now. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Couple of things. So for a long time, they were just a straight franchise business, and that was kind of valued probably more than it is now by the market. because it was a low capital business. So they were just basically setting up a framework for a tutor in a particular geographic location to help students. They give them back-end support. They provide online templates, bit of training. They provide their process, which was to do some testing of the child and then put together a plan to help them. And they could also, I guess, jump in and help the tutor if they had specific issues and questions. And that business scaled pretty well. And I think there are now something like 450 franchise locations around the world. And franchising is still the largest contributor. It's about 60% of revenue to the company now, but they did along the way start operating their own corporate sites, which were bricks and mortar sites. So sometimes, I don't know if people in Australia have seen, in a local shopping centre, there'll be an office for Kip McGrath Education where children can go in and get face-to-face tutoring. Oftentimes it has a lot of computer terminals so they can do online stuff as well. But that's now sort of 40, maybe 35 to 40% of revenue. And of course, the thing about those is that Kip McGrath gets all of the margin, not just the franchise fee that they get from doing the franchise operation. And it's probably taken them a little bit of a while to get the blend right. Obviously, if they're putting in bricks and mortar corporate locations and it's encroaching on a franchisee's territory, there are some issues. And also, obviously, the bricks and mortar locations tend to get put in the higher population areas that have shopping centres, for example. So that can become an issue for managing the franchise network and not overlapping with them a bit. The other thing which to I guess, drill down a bit on is the different types of partners they've had over the years. So at some stage in their history, they introduced a thing called the Gold Partner Program, which provided more support for accounting and marketing and HR that enable the franchisees to grow, but it charged a higher fee. And it's been the case over the last few years that they've been trying to push more franchisees towards the Gold Partner Program, which has boosted their returns. Obviously, some franchisees are resisting. But yeah, there's been a real channel management issue or strategy that's changed a bit over the years, in the last 5 or 6 years. And there's also been a change in management, which I guess has focused more on that than historically the case. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So just trying to find the latest profit numbers, which will help put that into focus. So for the financial year to June 30, and bearing in mind that we're about to go into the next half yearly results next month, so these numbers are getting a bit stale now. But for the financial year to June 30, which are the latest results for this company, revenue was up 9%, NPAT was up 54%, and the current revenue split was $21 million for the franchises and $10 million for the corporate centres. So kind of 2 to 1. There were 416 franchises and 37 corporate centres around the world as of the middle of last year. They announced the buyback at the same time, and they also provided guidance of mid-single-digit revenue growth and NPAT growth in the low double digits. So they forecast profit growth. I guess we'll get to see how good those forecasts are in about a month's time. A couple of other things happened during the last little while, last 12 months or so. The last McGrath retired or resigned from the company. That was a chap by the name of Storm McGrath, and he was the son of Kip McGrath. So Kip McGrath was on the board until, I think, 2019, if I've got my notes right, around that time anyway. And then Storm McGrath remained until last year, and he was the CEO for 19 years. But now the company doesn't have a direct McGrath line on the board, even though Kip McGrath still has about 8% of the stock. Storm McGrath had a holding which he's now sold down since retiring, and they've appointed a CEO from the outside to run the business. I'm just trying to find her name, Melinda Smith. So she started in November, and so she's just getting getting your feet under the desk, so to speak. So there's a few things moving with the board. A gentleman by the name of Damien Banks bought into the company, and he became the executive chair a few years ago. He stepped in as acting CEO because when Storm McGrath resigned, it took them a little while to find Melinda Smith, and it took her a little while to finish up where she was working and start in November. So he got involved heavily in the business. And I think if I can circle back to that sort of channel realignment strategy, he's been kind of driving that. So he is he's a bit of an entrepreneur. Damien Banks spent 15 years at Westpac before becoming CEO and managing director of a company called Connect Limited, Konekt. Was ASX listed, but then it was sold successfully in 2019. He's also a director of Boom Logistics, which is on our buy list, or was recently anyway, and a couple of other companies. So he's got a corporate background, an entrepreneurial background, and has been successful at selling companies. So I would expect to see perhaps some M&A activity, but certainly under his leadership, there's been a sharper focus on returns and a willingness to cut unviable segments. And the one that springs to mind was a company called Quintuple, which was their foray into America. And it was a company that set up a peer-to-peer network between students and tutors. So it didn't operate the normal Kip McGrath model, but it was a business operating in America, and they acquired it. And in the last 12 months, they've shut that down too because it didn't really go anywhere for them. So they've exited the US. They've looked at the channels between the silver and gold franchisee types of tiers, and they're still trying to push more of the gold membership. And they've put a bit of a hold on the operation of their own corporate centres, or at least growing them. They still have 39 or thereabouts, but they're not growing them as strongly as they were over the last 5 years. And one of the reasons for that is the use of capital. So when the business was looked at more favourably, I would say it was more of just a franchise-only model, and so low capital requirements, but getting a fee income for providing services. And then they got into their own corporate stores, which are certainly more profitable than franchise operations, but they cost more to set up and run. And then you got the risk, of course, if they don't work out, that you're carrying the can. So I think Damien Banks is going to be an interesting chair to drive the right balance between those needs in the business. So that's pretty much all I can say about Kip McGrath. The results were good, as I said. Melinda Smith has taken over as the new CEO, and that'll be an interesting thing to see how the company goes as it kind of moves from being founder-led to being management-led. Sometimes that works out, and sometimes it loses a bit of a spark. But I think having Damien Banks and his eye on and experience with running businesses will help solve that problem for them. QAV numbers, stock price is 60 cents. There's no consensus target for this company. Couldn't find much analyst coverage. I only found one analyst brokerage, and the reportage was fairly old on this company because it's small. IV1 is 21 cents. We don't have an IV2, having no consensus forecast, but 60 cents is way above 21, so it's not really representing that much value for us. Net equity per share as well is 33 cents, so we can't buy it for book value or book plus 30. And I'll also flag that net equity per share is way above NTA, which is only 3 cents. So there's a fair bit of goodwill sitting on the balance sheet for this company. Perhaps I didn't have time to work out why, but perhaps because of the Quintuple business acquisition in the US, but I'm not sure. By the by, it doesn't matter because Stock Doctor financial health is trend is strong and steady. Stockopedia quality rank is 97, which is very good. F-score is 7 out of 9, which is also very good. Stockopedia ranking is a bit lower at 86, and that's brought down by lower rankings for value and momentum. PE is 15 times, which is not the highest or the lowest, and PropCAF is nearly 5.5 times, which isn't too bad. No forecast earnings per share growth, so I can't score it for growth. Directors now hold 3% of the company since the McGraths have sold down. so we can't score it for owner-founder. The byline crossed after the results were out last year, so we can't score it for a new upturn. And doesn't have consistently increasing equity. So quality for this company in the QAV world is only 6 out of 11, or 55%, which is interesting because it got a higher ranking in Stockopedia, but lower on our scores. QAV score overall was 0.1, so it's at the bottom of the buy list. So as I said, I was sort of casting around for something to look at that we hadn't talked about before, and this is one of the reasons why I'm doing a small stock at the bottom of the buy list. But anyway, as I said before, the risks are basically around the moat for this company. So there's plenty of online competition. There are always plenty of local tutors who are prepared to tutor children. So there's local competition. Now, bear in mind they may not be qualified teachers and won't go through a rigorous process, but they still can be useful and a competitor for this company. It should be a capital light business because it's just clipping the ticket and the costs are borne by the franchisees, but it's not because they've got the corporates in it as well. And so that could be a risk for the business going forward. Could also be the strength if they make that business hum and can expand, but we'll see. I think it's a risk that the founders have now left the business, but not every business crashes after that, but it can be at least a checkpoint in the life of a company. And of course, the new CEO and how she goes is going to be a risk. Could also be a positive, of course. I think the biggest positive for this company is Damien Banks and the kind of financial discipline he seems to have been bringing to the company since he's been on the board. And if that continues, then I think he'll work out a lot of the problems I've spoken about and position his company for growth again. So that's Kip McGrath Education.
Sorry, just taking my mic off mute and turning my fan down. I'm trying to work out why they weren't on my buy list this week.
What's their ADT is low, but I think it's above your threshold.
Mine.
Yeah.
Right. I think they were probably Josephine.
Yeah.
At the time.
I did my download this morning. So
looks like
that can make a difference.
Current price is 60 cents. Previous month's close was 59. So I think it was slightly below it when I ran it over the weekend.
Yeah. And that's a good point for people if they're using your buy list. It's yours, any buy list is a snapshot. So if you're not putting out Josephine's, then there could be something that becomes a buy in between or a sell in between your buy list issues. So at least for full club members, I think it's still worthwhile downloading your own buy list if you're doing analysis midweek, if you've got something to buy or sell midweek and just checking the numbers again for yourself.
Yeah. Indeed. All right. Well, thank you, Tony. What have you got for after hours this week, apart from horses and fires?
Yeah, not much. It's actually been full-time. Well, not full-time, sorry. It's been a lot of communication from the area affected from different stud and farms as to what they're going through. So that's been pretty full on. Jenny and I got into watching Goliath. I don't know if you've seen that. It's about 10 years old now. And Jenny's really enjoying it. I'm sort of enjoying it. I think Billy Bob's great. He's in it. But it's maybe it's showing its age, but it got a bit all Weinstein in the first series with William Hurt played the principal of a legal firm who was sleeping with all his female staff and, not wearing clothes in the office and that kind of thing. I don't know if that was for shock value, but it was kind of creepy to watch it. And the second series was even worse. It got even creepier, kind of like, not in that way, but people were being amputated by drug cartels and things. So that I haven't enjoyed that. But the third series doesn't have much of that in it. So maybe that was not going to be a feature going forward, I hope. But yeah, it's kind of fun because a lot of high profile actors do cameos. So the third season has got Beau Bridges and what's his name? Forgotten his name now. But William Hurt's in it. Lots of fun people to watch.
A lot of dead actors by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
William Hurt's dead. Beau Bridges is dead. Yeah, I think.
So Goliath, I'm not going to say I hardly recommend it, and certainly going with your eyes wide open about how creepy it can be in parts, but otherwise it's pretty good. And I just picked up a track. I don't know if you have heard this before. Got to find my notes now. Easy Squeezy? No, what's it called? Sorry, I've closed my notes. I shouldn't have
Easy
done that.
squeezy Japanesey.
Something like that. Where are my notes? Here we go. Easy Sleazy. Mick Jagger and Dave Grohl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know why I hadn't heard of it before, but I came across it during the week. It's a fantastic track. And I think it was written coming out of lockdown. And the Mick Jagger sings and Dave Grohl plays drums and guitar. And it's got a great backing track. The lyrics are pretty basic. I think Mick must have written them to have everything rhyme. Easy and sleazy and all the rest of it. But yeah, great thumping rock track. Really good.
Oh, great. I'll check that out.
Mhm.
What have I got for you? I've been listening. On the drive back from Bundy, I was listening. I needed an audio book to listen to, and I ended up listening to Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential as an audio book, which I'd read over the last couple of years, but it was interesting hearing him narrate his own book. Have you ever read that?
I haven't, no. I've kind of had, I'm not really into the celebrity chef thing, so it's never really interested me, but I have seen a couple of his episodes of his show, and it does seem interesting just from his sort of approach to the world and lifestyle. Not necessarily, not the cooking side of things, which doesn't really interest me, but just his travel and who he sits down with and the conversations he has were good.
Well, it's interesting. When he wrote his first book, Kitchen Confidential, he really wasn't a celebrity chef. And in fact, the whole book is about talking about what a terrible thing restaurants are and how terrible the life is and how horrible it all is. And it was sort of an expose on kitchens, although he says he loves it, but he was drug addict, alcoholic, basically depicts his kitchens as a pirate ship where people are bleeding half the time and screaming and yelling and abusing each other and the whole deal. But I think it's interesting because he talks about how most restaurants are complete disasters and the people that own them and start them for the wrong reasons. And they go belly up and because they're vanity projects or, people don't know what they're doing. And it's, I tell you, after you listen to it, you probably never want to eat in a restaurant again. Anyway, that was interesting. But he also talks about a couple of...
Yeah, okay.
It's interesting. And he also talks about the good ones, like the ones that do make it work and why they make it work, and in his opinion. But I found it interesting. I sent a couple of bits to Taylor, actually. I said, listen to this chapter, listen to that chapter. One was, I think, next time you think you've had a bad day, have a listen to this chapter. He talks about a day in the life, waking up at 6 a.m., smoking 10 cigarettes, thinking about all of the stuff that's going to come in today, how many hundreds of pounds of beef and hundreds of pounds of fish and all the menu planning he's got to do and how you push out 1,000 meals in a busy restaurant and people calling in sick at the last minute and people not turning up and all the challenges and the headaches of running a busy restaurant. Have you watched The Bear? I think you didn't like The Bear, right?
I didn't like it, no. It sounds like The Bear, though, doesn't it?
It makes The Bear look good. Like the level of intensity that he talks about is about 10 times what you get through from The Bear. So yeah, it's pretty bad. But that was interesting. I had a coffee with a guy for a couple of hours yesterday. An old friend of mine lives in Seattle. I've known for 30 odd years. One of his best friends was in Brisbane with his wife going to the Open. And he said, you should catch up with this guy. So I caught up with him for a coffee for a couple of hours. He's a partner of a big law firm in Seattle, handles Boeing, and he lives next door to Jeff Bezos in Medina and Washington. Said he was really worried when Jeff and Mackenzie got divorced because he thought she might subdivide. She got the property and they might subdivide the 20 acres and have poor people living next to him.
You ever been up to Lake Washington and seen on one side of the lake, you got the Boeings and the Nordstroms, and on the other side of the lake, you got the Gateses and the Bezoses. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he said he lives next door to Bezos' property and he's lived there for 20 years and Gates is up the road and stuff.
Mm.
Or was prior to the divorce. I don't know who got the house in that divorce. But that was interesting. Had a coffee with him for a couple of hours.
So you say he runs Boeing?
No. He's a partner in a law firm that
right.
he specializes in the airline sector. So Boeing has been his main client for decades.
He would have had a good run lately with the 737 MAX issues.
Yeah, well, that's coming up in our US show. I'm going to be doing an airline again today. But yeah, they've also had whistleblowers and whistleblowers suddenly dying before they can give testimony and all sorts of things going on.
That sounds like Goliath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
And I watched Sinners finally. Have you seen Sinners?
No.
Hunter's been trying to get me to watch it for a year. Just won Golden Critics' Choice Award or something, I think. Sort of a big film last year. It's all right. Didn't mind it. But there's a lot of blues music in it. It's set in the Deep South in the 30s. And a friend of mine gave me a DVD of Wim Wenders' documentary from years ago, The Soul of a Man. It's part of a Martin Scorsese series of documentaries that Scorsese produced about the Delta blues, the early blues.
Okay.
And this one focuses a lot on Skip James and Blind Willie Johnson. So I've been listening to a lot of Skip James this week, who I'd never heard of before, but he was an early Delta blues guy. I think he may have taught Robert Johnson how to play guitar. It was either him or the devil, one of the two. But it's amazing. Like, I don't know how they've remastered all of these recordings, but I've been listening to a lot of Skip James and Robert Johnson this week. And last time I remember listening to Robert Johnson, it was all really scratchy stuff. Now it's crystal clear recordings on Spotify. So, and same with the Skip James stuff. So that's been fun. Been a long time since I've gotten to the really early Delta blues. I think it was like 1930s, the Skip James recordings, and good stuff. So that's it. That's all I've got. Skip James.
Well, I should say I've just started to read a book called The Margin of Trust about Berkshire Hathaway.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've got through the first chapter, but I'll probably update you next week when I finish it. But yeah, interesting.
Really? Is there anything new to be learned?
I don't think so, but it's like anything. It's always good to have a refresher, and it brings things to the front of your mind that were just sitting there untapped for a while. Yeah. Written by the guy who put the collected essays of Warren Buffett out 10 years ago or so.
Okay.
And it's it's more about the Berkshire Hathaway business model and their culture. At least the first chapter is anyway, how they acquire companies and who they acquire and under what circumstances. So that's interesting. So, I mean, I've read all the stuff before, but it's a good story. It's worth reading again because it's so different to anything you get taught in management, in terms of, having a small head office and devolving as much as you can to the operating businesses. And then the only way you can do that is if you trust them already. And how do you, identify people to trust when you hire them and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. I've only read the first chapter, but I'll give an update as I finish it.
Excellent. Well, the only other thing that happened interesting for me this week was reading Moonraker. Drax mentions a guy called Herman Oberth and said that he had read his book, The Rocket to the Planetary Space, The Rocket into Planetary Space. And I thought, who is Herman Oberth? So I looked him up. Fascinating guy. Herman Oberth was an Austrian, Transylvanian Nazi who, in the early 20th century, like in 1923, I think, he wrote this book, The Rocket into Planetary Spaces, The Rocket to the Planetary Spaces. Basically, this guy invented rocketry. He was Werner von Braun's mentor and teacher later on.
Right. Yep.
he wrote this book in 1923 that basically said, you know what, we could build rockets and go to space, and here's how you would do it. And he basically thought it all through, was put all the physics and all the maths in there, and invented basically rocketry as we knew it. And he lived until 1989, died in 1995, was a proud Nazi right until the end.
That's hardcore, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, he was still a member of sort of pro-Nazi organizations, right until the end. Oberth was described as a loyal supporter and donor by Stille Hilfe, a Nazi support organization, in its obituary of him after he died. So, there you go. But he didn't get picked up by the US as part of Operation Paperclip because he wasn't directly involved in the V2 project like Werner von Braun was.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the V2 stuff was based on his work, his thinking, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd never heard of this guy before, but I love the way I'm finding Ian Fleming difficult to read. It's kind of, I don't know, not great literature. I've decided Fleming stuff, but I do like the fact that he drops bits of pop culture in there, or things that he obviously was interested in, and reference points. And so I'm going down rabbit holes. It was interesting because I went, Herman Oberth, that sounds like a real guy. I better go look him up. And then when I was reading his biography, he mentioned that later in life he was a big believer in extraterrestrials and UFOs. And he wrote something about it late in life, and he quoted Pliny the Elder saying that there were reports of shining shields in the sky. And I was like, I've never heard that before. So I opened up my copy of Pliny the Elder's Natural Histories and started rereading that. And the first chapter of that is him basically paying homage or thanking Titus Vespasian, who was the emperor at the time he was writing it, which was funny because Ray and I were just recording episodes of the Caesar podcast, which was about Titus's siege on Jerusalem in 70 CE. So it all sort of went from James Bond to Herman Oberth and the Nazis through to Pliny the Elder, back to Titus, back to Julius Caesar and Jerusalem. So anyway.
You didn't work out what the shining shields in the sky were?
Well, I did. So I ended up reading his chapters on planets and stars, and he's talking a lot about astronomical objects like meteors and comets and, all those sorts of observations. So it sounds to me like probably, people seeing meteors or comets or, something bursting into the sky. And your frame of reference is, well, it looked like a big shiny shield that had spark. He talks about sparks coming off of it, flying through the sky, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. Oh, I watched some great Richard Feynman videos with Fox this week too, talking about the speed of light, why it's a constant, which was great too, but I won't bore you with that because we've got to go do another show.
Yeah, I saw something recently about quantum entanglement going faster than the speed of light.
Yes.
I can't yes. Yeah.
Well, quantum entanglement is theoretically instant.
Right.
So, speed of light is 300 million meters per second, and quantum entanglement is instant. But that's the whole thing about it. It's not actually, nothing is traveling with quantum entanglement. It's just, it's
doing something else is doing something, and they're synchronized.
Yes, one particle spins, the other particle knows how it's spinning, even though it could be, in theory, a light year away. Yeah, that's why quantum mechanics does our heads in, because we're like, how the hell does that work? Anyway, Thank you, TK. Thank you, Doug,
Thanks,
for the
Cam.
questions.
Yep.
Congratulations to Doug and Wal on their results. And talk to you
Give me some more requests for pulled porks too, because
You're running out.
I can start recycling. There's a couple of ones I've got left to do, but as you saw today, they're small ADT, so it'd be good to get some requests. Yeah.
What do we do when we run out of pulled porks? Just
Well, it hasn't happened yet after 6 years.
We've solved investing.
I'm sure someone's got a stock out there they're interested in.
All right, let's go talk about American stocks. Thanks, TK.